This is the investigative report on cheating that became a national news item. You notice that paper was printed in 2 colors. Well, the front and back pages were. I remember the time we published the first 2-color edition of Potpourri. We were so proud of our big secret that we'd take newspapers all over the top windows in those 2 classrooms so nobody could see what we were up to. And the whole school was abuzz. Like different in there. Sadly, the big day came and we hit the newsstands in the whole room. And it was like a big yawn. Is that all? Big deal. Well, on behalf of all the Potpourri alumni in the room and those not in the room, I say to the rest of you, yes, it was a big deal. In fact, it was a BFD. So I couldn't say that. This photo was taken in E125, the journalism room, as we battled against another press deadline. And we did things the hard way back then. We did it the old way, the right way, with electric typewriters, X-Acto knives, blue pencils, pressed down headlines, and rubber cement, which helped sometimes. now that I think about it, we really could not have produced a 2-color, national award-winning newspaper. See them all around the room. I laid them out there. 16 to 20 pages apiece with those primitive tools. I mean, think about it. How could we do that? It wasn't possible. We did it anyway. And they're not here, unfortunately, but I would like to recognize the 6 editors-in-chief of that publication: Tom Livers, Pat Kennedy, Nancy Roberts, Sharon Gagnon, Julie Click, and Wendy Vedder. That's Nancy Frick and me going over her in-depth investigative report on cheating. That's the flagship article in that edition over there in orange that rocked the school, the town, the county school board, the state commissioner of education, literally the nation. Wendy Vedder, editor-in-chief, was interviewed and featured in Today newspaper as well as the Sentinel Star. The story was picked up by local TV channels 6 and 9. It ran in the Chicago Tribune, on the Paul Harvey show. We even drew a response from the media relations office at the White House, all because we all cheated. Of course, the principal took a dim view of that. We, of course, proved that it wasn't just Cocoa Beach that cheated. It was all the high schools, and we cheated because our parents cheated on income tax and, insurance padding, things like that. So it was quite an interesting reaction. I've led proposals at Lockheed Martin, 20,000 pages and more. We've won contracts worth billions, but I'm here to tell you, in all my career, I don't think anything ever quite equal what our staff did with that issue. I remain just as proud of it and of them today as I did 35 years ago. We covered the heartbreaking stories, and we supported the sports teams, the chorus, the band, and the clubs with special editions. I noticed some of you looking back through them. We cranked out 214 special editions in 6 years under hard-charging special edition editors Doris Gould, Cheryl Bond, Lori Shanuel and Ben Lucchese, Bonnie Smith, and then the troublesome trio, the infamous Jerry Banta, Alan Redman, and Jeannie Kosmosky. Well, actually more like a deadly duo and a chaperone. Jeannie wasn't any trouble. But I remember the time Alan and Jerry got up above the crawl space over my classroom, and during Brit Lit they started showering me with confetti from up above. Fortunately, I had an informant who had tipped me off that this was happening, so when the confetti started coming down, I just happened to have an umbrella handy, which I popped up like this. And I just went on to be or not to be. That's the question. Never missed a beat. And they never did figure out how I knew to have the umbrella. When it came to getting out 300 copies each of 2 special editions at halftime. Halftime, what, 20 minutes? Of a state playoff basketball game. First, we ran off our famous basketball ballad broadsides in red, white, and blue paper and handed those out on the Cocoa Beach side. But in the spirit of fair play and balanced journalism, we also interviewed the cheerleaders on the other side and printed up another edition. It was Ocala Forest, as I recall, in green and yellow paper with some of their cheers on it. I would have to say that's probably the only time that ever happened at a high school sporting event. Let me point out that all these special editions were printed on a good old-fashioned mimeograph machine. The kind where you had to type on the purple stencils and attach them to the rotating drum, hit the switch, stand back. I'll bet that trusty machine cranked out 100 reams of paper of all colors over the years. We even had a name for it. Her, taken from Hamlet. Sure, Ophelia would jam occasionally. But when Jeannie or Alan would talk nice to her, she'd always come around, better than she did for Hamlet. As if it wasn't enough to be publishing 6 in-depth theme-centered news magazines and 40-some-odd special editions of poetry a year, I guess we were just gluttons for punishment because we decided to give birth to a literary art magazine as well. So that's how our Winged Stallion took flight in 1974. What a flight it was, under the capable leadership of editors Richard Hooker, Bill Booker, Deborah Dollenberg, and Beverly Gould. Wings of Fancy soon brought home more national honors to our school and to our journalism program. Please be assured that Beverly's head was not exploding. This is what happens to photo albums during a hurricane. But Wings of Fancy reached the pinnacle of high school journalism when it captured the coveted gold medal from the Columbia Scholastic Press Association only 3 years after it was first published. It was won under Deborah Dollenberg and then repeated, which is practically unheard of, the next year under Beverly Gould. And some of you actually have contributions to that magazine. That was the point of Wings of Fancy. It wasn't just the Wings of Fancy and Potpourri staff. It was all of you. It was the whole school. We had hundreds of entries. Literally, I think one year we had close to 1,000, counting all the little haikus and poems and everything. And that gave the magazine an unbelievable depth and quality. Short stories, poetry, essays, artwork, photos, and cartoons. That was a huge accomplishment. I don't know if everybody realized that, but that award 2 years in a row was about like winning a state championship 2 years in a row in a major sport. So that was really bravo. Well, they say all good things must come to an end. But to be honest with you, I really don't think that was the case when it came time for me to leave my family in Cocoa Beach. The decision to leave Cocoa Beach High School in 1978 and join up with Mark Marietta in Orlando as a writer and editor was one of the hardest decisions I've made in my entire life. And that remains true today as I look out into the audience. And I say that because I was not burned out of teaching. I was starved out. I simply could not support a family on a teacher's salary, plain and simple. I remember it was yesterday when I announced my decision to the journalism class, Wings of Fancy and Potpourri staff. The staff was laden with sophomores and juniors. We just won that major award. They're all raring to go for the next year. And I mean, there wasn't really a dry eye in the house. Even 35 years later, I can remember how that felt. It felt like I was copping out, letting them down. It was just tough. You know, I'm not saying I haven't had a successful and meaningful career in aerospace, nor that I haven't made an important contribution to my company, perhaps also to the nation's defense in the process, because I have. You know, but the sad thing is, there's nothing I have done in the last 33 and a half years that was any more important than what I was doing, and doing damn well back then at Cocoa Beach High School. And that is a shame to our priorities as a nation. And it's, you know, defense I get, okay? Profit, I don't so much get. But I can't say I never look back. I look back many, many times.